I'll say.
Sure. Testing. I'll use my favorite. Rubber duck, come in.
Okay, you're working now. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, folks. Let's kick this off. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Are there any announcements? John, who's with us electronically?
Nobody is.
What? Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
It is approved. Thank you, gentlemen. Public forum. Before we get into that, welcome, sir. Are you just a nice spectator or do you have a particular,
Contractor, Mike Nadeau.
Oh, you're the Nadeau?
Yeah,
Is it Nadeau or Nadeau?
say it however you want.
However you want to get paid. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you.
We hope you find this enjoyable.
I wish we could do this more often.
Okay, I like that. Pronounce your name for me, sir.
Stolpestad.
Stolpestad. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, Norwegian.
I figured.
Yeah.
Stolpestad. Okay, we're good to go. All right, welcome once again. And of course, our illustrious gentleman, Greg. Good to see you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Okay, looking forward to your discourse. Let's move on to the consent calendar. Are there any items that any of the managers would like to pull from the consent calendar? Yes, sir.
Item K, direct treasurer's report.
Treasury report, that's one. Mr. Bill, Don, Rick, we're good to go? All right. With that said, I will entertain motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar for items A through J.
I will second your motion.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
it is approved. Let's go to the treasurer's report.
Okay, yeah. Just had one correct, I believe, and it's actually Mr. Nadeau's, item. It's under the description for the payment on that. It says Silver Lake Outlet Maintenance, and I believe it's incorrect. I believe that's the West Lakeland project.
Yeah.
So if we get that correct.
Oh, thank you for noticing that. That wasn't Silver Lake.
With that said, I'd like to make a motion to approve item K on the consent calendar.
So second your motion. It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 It is approved. Thank you, sir, for observing that. So with that said, let's move on to updates and requests. Partner Volunteer Citizens Advisory Committee, Business and Reports, Administrator Engineer. $5,400 for the community grant to Woodfield Prairie and Veterans Park Lake Hey, Corey, Mr. Engineer, could you lead us into this one?
Sure.
Tell us what's happening.
Mr. President, managers, you tabled this or renewed the tabling of this permit at the last meeting. And you asked Washington Conservation District to come back with a little bit more information, especially related to future maintenance and responsibility of that maintenance. So Brett has been working hard. He put together some additional information that I include in your packet that went out last Friday. With that, the request has been reduced from $10,000 to $5,400, basically because Bellwind has agreed to do the first burn. And you also asked, if possible, to have a memorandum of understanding prepared, and so that's in your packet. Attorney Torseth has reviewed that MOU and finds it acceptable in format at least. And Brett is here to answer any questions.
Wonderful. If the managers have any questions or comments, I would like to first say something. Sir, I appreciate what you've done here, that you've taken your diligence and you're concerned about this project. So tell us what you did.
Well, I sat down with Richard Throne of the Lower St. Croix Valley Veterans. We met at City Hall. Time is blurry at the moment. I believe it was last week. And he had a relationship with staff at Bellwind Conservancy. Eric Paulman has been there for quite some time. Got him on the phone, asked him if he'd be able to help us out this year with a prescribed burn, and they were open to it. And so the WCD prepared a burn plan that was submitted to the DNR and approved, returned to the WCD, and that's now being reviewed by the local fire department. And pending approval of that plan and good weather in the next couple of weeks, Bellwind has agreed to conduct the prescribed burn this year.
Excellent. I have one more question. The integrated pest management, this is regarding what specifically?
So the budget items for IPM or integrated pest management, specifically spot spraying to control noxious weed species that can't be adequately controlled through volunteer management efforts that would be primarily mechanical control, hand pulling, digging, that sort of thing. Mainly to hire a contractor to take care of that herbicide application work.
Okay. What about the use of insecticides?
No use of insecticides. It was written into operations and maintenance agreement that was also reviewed and signed.
Tell us about this bumblebee.
The rusty patch bumblebee. Yeah.
What's gonna happen there?
Well, that's one of the goals of this project is to enhance forage and nesting habitat for that particular insect as an endangered species and other at-risk insects in the region. And the rusty patch bumblebee has been found on numerous parcels, numerous occasions in very recent years in Lake St. Croix Beach. So I think it's reasonable to expect that it will show up eventually on this parcel, and hopefully we can enhance and create better habitat for that species.
And not just what I've read, but I just want to pick your brain.
Yeah.
We've got a 5-year plan on this, right? That it's going to be maintained
10 years.
10 years. Excellent. Okay. Oh, this, forgive my candor. This is bang for your buck kind of stuff. And so I can't laud you enough, sir. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Yeah. Well, they're a really fun group to work with. So
Are they really? Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're gonna be at the forefront of volunteer work, and they're going to take care of these things. Is it, just out of curiosity, it's gonna end up turning into Oak Savannah or what?
At this time, there's a plan to incorporate tree planting into the long-term management of the parcel. It's gonna be maintained as open grassland, but elsewhere in the city, you're familiar, I'm sure, old beautiful bur oaks all over the place.
Right.
So I think it fits in nicely with the ecology of that neighborhood in that area.
Okay. And then the other one is you had a second prescribed burn, I believe in the second year. What's the story with that? Are we making assumptions about Bellwind being ever so kind and doing that, or?
I think, we didn't make that assumption here. I think it's worth asking if they're kind enough to burn the parcel again, in year two. I think, we pursue that route, but I didn't want to overstep and assume that they would be able to help us out a second year in a row. And so that, item for a contracted prescribed burn was left in the initial estimate, but it's possible that they would help us again next year.
Well, I'm a little disappointed about the lack of phosphorus removal, but ultimately, this is important. And my understanding is that it will capture water and help keep it within the system, you know. Do the managers have anything they'd like to add, or do you have any questions? Sir?
I don't know, I think if you look in our plan, you'll see that we're a watershed district and we have a strong focus on water, but we also do things to restore habitats that have gone by as well, and I think this is doing that, and I think it adds to a corridor, a green corridor, that we've already put a fair bit of energy into, so that helps with that connectivity as well. So I'm pleased to see the effort here and the work they put forth to pull this together according to our requests. So
Thank you, sir. Anything else?
So,
I-
go ahead.
I'd just like to reiterate what was already said, that thank you for revisiting this, because I think, as we got into the discussion last meeting, and I brought up the maintenance thing, it was a huge oversight, and it's taken care of now, and I feel a lot better about it, having people understand what their responsibilities are moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Good one.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this makes it work quite a bit better. I think the long-term maintenance part is a pretty key part, having something like this, function long-term. I did have one question about, if Bellwin comes in and pays for or does the second burn, does that mean that the amount that we end up getting out of the, on the project gets reduced by that amount?
Right,
I see.
yeah, so they would.
So you just wouldn't bill, you just wouldn't, invoice for it.
Yeah, right.
I think, okay,
Good question.
thanks.
Excellent, John.
Great.
Appreciate that. What do you think, Mr. Inspector? Should we be nice to him?
I think so.
Appreciate it.
It's encouraging.
Yeah.
Okay,
Do I have to make a motion?
please.
Oh, wait, before you do that, you
Oh,
have to, you have to
Attorney
have a,
Forsyth.
Oh,
yes, you have to have a motion to remove it from the table.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Thank you. She's keeps us.
I'll
keeps us
have
straight
to
now. Make a motion, sir.
motion to remove it from the table and bring it back before the board.
I will second that motion.
I will now make a motion that we
Wait,
approve
you,
the.
you need to vote on
Leave it
that
up,
one.
Oh,
Sorry, technical.
Aye.
aye,
Aye,
aye.
it has been removed from the table. So proceed. Can I make my motion now?
I'll offer a motion to approve the $5,400 community grant for the Woodville Prairie and Business Park Prairie Restoration.
I will second that motion. It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye,
aye.
you're approved, sir.
Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Thank you, Brett.
Yeah.
Very kind of you again. Thank you for your patience, for working with us.
Yeah.
See you in the future, and you know what we like.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate you working with me and bearing with me on this, and I think we found a really great way forward on this one. So,
Okay.
yeah. Looking forward to sharing the good news. And I'll keep you posted on the schedule, the prescribed burn, if I can get a notice out. You're interested in coming down and seeing them out there burning. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're interested, I can make sure I pass that along. So,
That'd be good.
Yeah, we are actually.
yeah,
Maybe we can get a drone out there and whatever.
possibly.
Just
Do you,
for thoughts.
do you happen to have one that you use?
Somebody does.
East of Mon Valley Creek.
Okay, cool. Yeah. that'd be
Doesn't our legal department have a drone? What? Okay, never mind.
Well, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Safe drive?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brett. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
All right, our next item. The amendment to the 2015-2025 watershed management plan, Legion Pond, Deputy Lake flood risk reduction. Mr. Williams, you're up.
You have a potential project in front of you to, this home around Legion Lake, or Legion Pond rather. And down, and including a flood risk reduction improvement, near Downs Lake. That is not specifically included in the implementation, program of your plan. And so there is the amendment process to add that to the implementation program so that you can pursue that. So what you have in front of you is a memorandum that just summarizes what the amendment is. There's also a letter attached that would go to the plan review authorities. Ultimately, it used to be a minor plan amendment process and a major plan amendment process. Now everything defaults to the minor plan amendment process. So the process is we send it out to the plan review authorities. They have 30 days to comment on it. If they want to provide comment on it, otherwise it just is we have no comment, and you can hold a public hearing and then adopt it. So the plan would be to, if the letter is acceptable, then we would get that out as soon as possible to start that clock going. And I think we proposed having a public hearing, that 30 days can be concurrent with the public hearing. So I think we proposed having a public hearing, I think, at your second meeting in May, regularly scheduled meeting.
May 8th, the first.
Oh, May first meeting in May, sorry.
That's, wait, that's May, that's not May, or May?
May 8th would be the first meeting.
Okay. And how would we do that? Take like we usually do? Hopefully it won't be crickets and sort of thing. The way we do that, it's just in the meeting, for the public hearing. But we'll have word out on that, correct?
And Mr. President, managers, the board did the same thing with the Sunnybrook Lake purchases where it was talked about vaguely in the plan, but not specifically. And so when you're spending this kind of money, Bowser recommended that you do a plan amendment to specifically call out where you're spending your money.
Okay, very good, sir. Is there anything with any of the managers?
I just had a question on the Downs Lake flood improvement on that property. How does that work in with the bonding issue that maybe difficult? I mean, how does that fit in? Is that was the bond specifically for the purchase of properties or can be used for flood mitigation?
It's it qualifies as a capital
Yes.
improvement, and therefore
Okay.
that qualifies as an expense for the bonds. that we
Bonds,
have.
okay.
Mhm.
The bond council had said that even the study, the Valley Branch portion of the Valley Branch Army Corps of Engineers study, that also qualifies for being expensed through the bond.
Okay. So, any of the managers have any further questions?
Oh. Yes, sir. What do we do with Bowser stumbles on this? What's plan B?
Mr. President, or Vice President, I don't see Bowser saying no to this. I guess the worst case scenario would be if somebody raises a lot of questions and pushes it into a major plan amendment, or I don't know what the terminology is that delays it.
Yeah, I think if somebody, I'd have to double check the statute, but I think if somebody submits like a formal comment in objection to the amendment, then I think you have to formally respond to the comment, and that draws out the process.
But this seems like it's bread and butter watershed district work. So I
I
don't
agree.
see Bowser saying no.
It struck me that way as well. It's just like a doomsday scenario.
And as John mentioned, even though this particular project is not specifically in the plan among the policies that are in your current plan does kind of as the umbrella that this falls under, and they're very well aligned. So in the letter itself, we copy and pasted what that policy is to show that it's consistent with, that this project is consistent with your practice.
And I was a bit surprised to see that we even need an amendment for that reason, because we already have it in the existing plan, but I don't know planning enough. I'm not questioning your judgment, so, Greg, so.
No,
We're fine with that.
it also satisfies a public. Mr. Brock,
I mean, from my standpoint, the only entity that might raise an issue would be Lake Elmo, and we're coordinated with them, right? And they're all on board, so, yeah, I think they would be the only ones that might raise any issue of, if this hit them by surprise.
And Mr. President, Managers, this doesn't lock you into doing this. This just gives you the ability to do it in a more transparent way.
thank you. Okay, so our attorney has looked at this. Susanna, can we direct a bar? We don't have to vote on this, or?
No, you do want,
Yes, ma'am.
I think for all of these can all be directed. I don't think you need a motion to do any of these. Yeah, each of these actions can just be a direction. If you want to do a motion, you can do a motion, but I don't think it's necessary.
You won't do a motion.
Okay.
We're going to ask our engineer to follow through with sending the letter, set a public hearing for May 8th, and certainly encourage technical advisory committees and citizens, however we do that. That would be, I don't know if that's coming up. I'm not going to get into that about public hearings for feedback. Maybe we'll get that when we have the May 8th public hearing. Somebody might want to share some information or have questions, whatever that might benefit all of us. So with that said, make it so, sir.
Well, thank you.
Okay, we're good. Thank you, Greg. Long way to drive for that one, huh?
Well, okay.
Oh, you got another one, that's right. Look, right. Okay. Let's move on to the Watershed Management Plan 2025 to 2035. Go ahead, Mike. Thank you.
Speaking of attempting to get citizens to attend and participate in public hearings, a few months ago, we presented draft goals to the Plan Technical Advisory Committee, got some feedback on that. And during the follow-up discussion in January, I mentioned that those goals that we discussed with Plan TAC focused on resource issues, kind of thing. Water quality, stormwater runoff, groundwater, not sort of the more, I guess, like abstract issues, like education, outreach, operations, how you go about your business. And there was some discussion among managers about it might be good to see some explicit goals about that, regardless of whether or not they are included adjacent to the resource goals or included elsewhere in the plan, but it'd be nice to see some goals related to those. And so this is a follow-up to that. And what you have in front of you are some draft issue statements and goals following the same parallel structure to the resource goals, specifically focusing on education engagement and then your organization and operation issues. And I'm gonna just kind of briefly walk through those.
Please.
There are two issues that I identified related to education and engagement. Issue statement number one says that opportunities exist to build relationships with residents, landowners, and community that are unaware of the BBWD and its activities. Basically, it's essentially looking at visibility, that there are those who live and work within the watershed who don't know that you exist or what you do. And so related to that, there would be two goals. One goal to increase the visibility of the BBWD, its programs and projects among those who live, work, and recreate within the watershed. And then goal 1B would be support the community outreach and engagement efforts of the East Metro Water Resource Education Program and other partners.
One comment there on goals 1. I was thinking it'd be good to add, like right after increased visibility, include and understanding of the Valley Branch Watershed District,
Nice.
or understanding of
Mhm.
activity. However you word it.
Acknowledging our existence. Okay. Good, Rick.
And then issue 2 is, so issue number 1 was focused primarily on visibility. Issue 2 is a little bit getting more at that knowledge base, not specifically about your organization, but about sort of watershed stewardship practices. And that issue is that lack of knowledge about best practices and available resources may limit the actions of residents and landowners who would seek to protect water bodies and natural areas. This gets a little bit to the grant program where you approved a grant tonight, that, they were aware of those resources and took advantage of them, but there are those in the watershed who maybe don't know what to do, or that those resources exist. And so that's the issue here. The goals related to that would be to increase small scale, low impact development and conservation practices among watershed residents and landowners. Goal 2B would be to maintain or increase participation in your cost share programs. And then goal 2C to support MREP and other partners in developing and distributing materials, promoting the awareness of watershed issues and land use best practices.
Goal 2C is essentially to facilitate goals 2B, 2A, more or less, or?
Yeah, I actually have a note in here that since I sent this out, that I was going to suggest combining goals 1B and 2C, because I think they're very similar.
Okay. Anything further on that, gentlemen? Okay, draft organization.
So again, these issues are kind of related to how you operate and go about your business, like at an administrative level. They're pretty high level and fairly general. They are not intended to imply that you guys are doing anything wrong at this point, but just kind of keep the ship righted. And the first one is that the issue being that overlapping jurisdictions create the potential for gaps and or redundancies in the VBWD's roles relative to other natural resource management organizations. Again, not that there are gaps or redundancies identified, but because you manage the same resources as some other folks and you have overlapping jurisdiction with land use authorities, there's potential for those conflicts to occur.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah.
And so the goals related to that, there's 2 goals. One is to minimize or prevent redundancy in VBWD programs through periodic review of VBWD roles and activities in cooperation with other partners.
Okay.
And that to some extent, you guys do that anytime you go through a rules update, you engage your technical partners and they comment and provide feedback and give and take, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And then goal 1B is to identify and address gaps in services in consultation with partners and communities.
Yeah, that's automatic, right? For the most part. It's written there.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, these kind of, the idea is that there wouldn't necessarily be anything added to your plate in terms of duties in order to accomplish these goals. These are how you operate right now. And it's more just a commitment to make sure that, if we find it, we're gonna keep our eyes out for potential gaps and redundancies.
Right. It's creating the awareness that we have that and we're gonna follow up. So yeah, even that seems redundant, right? So, okay, a little bit. Anything from you gentlemen, by chance? All right, issue 2.
Issue 2. Oh, was there a comment?
No, apparently not. Everybody's good with it.
That's related to financial. And the issue is that financial and staff resources available to pursue VBWD goals are limited and may not be sufficient to achieve all desired outcomes. In other words, there's not enough money in John's to do all the stuff that you want to do. And so the goals being that you'll leverage partnerships in pursuit of shared goals to maximize value or reduce costs. And those partners that are identified, specifically MREP, Washington County, and the One Watershed, One Plan partners. Not limited to those, but they are identified because they are very common partners.
Really good to call that out.
Yes, sir.
Washington Conservation District isn't voted. I mean, they're one of our major partners. Or is that?
EG, yeah, they're.
Yeah, I suppose
General
they should be listed separately from the county.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, we want that.
Goal 2B is to pursue grant funding and cost share opportunities. For example, public-private partnerships to reduce direct program and project costs to the VBWD.
Right, and whenever we engage in anything like this, we automatically do that, right, John? We immediately look for anything that might be available, funding that might be available in any way, shape, or form, legally, of course. Yes, but it's an excellent reminder.
Yeah, again, this is something you guys are already doing, but it's good to affirm that why you do it.
Yes, sir.
And then the 2C is, I think, maybe the furthest stretch relative to your current operations, and that's consider cost benefit analyses when evaluating implementation and prioritizing potential projects and programs. I don't know, I know that's done on some level, like for example, in this flood risk reduction, that study looks at the feasibility and cost of multiple alternatives, but I'm not sure if that's done through all of your projects and programs. And so there may be potential gaps where that might require some future.
This would fall on our engineering department, but
Mr. President, I think you do it mostly on your projects. Any significant project, you do a cost benefit analysis on. For example, the Downs Lake study, you looked at different alternatives to improve the water quality of Downs Lake and the cost benefit of each. I guess a question for Greg would be, how do other organizations look at their programs? Because it seems like it might be a little bit subjective in how you'd look at a cost benefit of education.
Education is a black box with respect to, I mean, and that's primarily why many organizations, for example, like small scale grant programs, many of them just house them under their education and outreach umbrella specifically because it's very difficult to quantify what the actual benefits are from an environmental standpoint. And so that's an area where I think you're given some leeway with those.
But the education umbrella is beneficial because it essentially just disseminating information creates the awareness of education.
Yes, that it's generally viewed as a net benefit, even if you can't necessarily quantify, how many pounds of phosphorus, for example, or how many tons of sediment you're reducing through those efforts. Right. Some programs like street sweeping, for example, like that's a program where it's much easier to quantify what the benefit is relative to costs. Or you could look at your rules and say, because of you've had this many developments with these rules in place, without this level of treatment, what would be the pollutant load without that level of regulation or something like that. Not necessarily advocating for the expansion of that analysis in the current plan, but this is just a goal that you would be considering that when you're evaluating potential changes to potential projects or changes to programs in the future. And it doesn't always necessarily imply a strict numeric cost benefit analysis as well. It could be pros and cons and at a qualitative level as well.
Yeah. That could raise the cost of something because of its redundancy. Yes. So it may not be necessary. Okay. Location of goals in the plan format. What are we doing here?
Sure. So these are presented in a structure parallel to the resource goals, issue statement followed by goals. But they are a little bit different in that they're not focused on, groundwater, wetlands, and those other resources. And so there are a couple different ways to go, and you don't have to make a decision tonight, but I wanted to get some input if you have it. In terms of plan structure, whether or not you'd prefer these goals to be housed with the resource goals to have kind of all of your goals in one place.
Yeah.
Or if it makes more sense for these goals to be in the implementation portion of the plan, where in the implementation portion is how we describe the types of activities that you do and how you go about them. And so those are kind of two options of where they could go. They're not the only options, but if you had any kind of gut feel or instinctual preference, I'd start there and then when you see the whole plan together, you can decide, does it make sense here? Should they be moved? But I'd at least know where to start.
Yeah, I'm thinking, the implementation, it provides us with a methodology on how to attack something, how we're going about, dealing with a particular project and what we have to look at for its completion, overlooking the so-called gaps with certain items that we talked about earlier, things like that, right?
Yes, I mean, the implementation section right now is kind of structured where it starts out with like listing the types of activities that you do. I like to use the word tools, like they're the tools that are at your disposal to solve your problems. You've got your regulatory program, you've got your cost share program, you've got monitoring, you've got studies, those types of things. And education and outreach falls under that umbrella.
Would, if it were under issues and goals, wouldn't that kind of reinforce, how, what I frequently hear us talk about in terms of the importance of education? So it would kind of highlight a little bit more. I mean, I like the notion of integrating it, as part of implementation, but on the other hand, it's also maybe useful to have it, highlighted because of the emphasis that we've placed on it.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's, the education portion has to be out front. That's a very good point.
Mhm.
In everything that we do, everything that we go about, again, as I said earlier, dissemination of information, that's where it starts. Then it creates an awareness of nothing else.
Yes, I can see that, and I think that including it with the other issues would highlight its importance as a consideration for the entire plan development and kind of a lens through which you look at everything that you do.
Okay. Managers have anything else on this particular?
One other,
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Please.
because these goals were not included in the plan pack discussion that your partners comment or participated in, I think it's worth at least sending them to your board conservationist, Michelle Jordan, because I think these are more about how you do things at an administrative level. And I think Bowser's really the only partner who's interested in that sort of thing. But I think that it would be good to at least run them by her as an informational
Yeah,
courtesy.
Okay.
yes. Is that what you've established here on the,
Not in the next steps.
yeah, okay. I'm all for that. Everybody stays abreast of everything that we're doing and vice versa. Exchanging information. Okay. And we don't require a motion on this. We're just gonna direct it. Now, is it safe to move on to the draft? What are we going to do here? Because
That's back to me.
that's back to you. Okay, Darrell.
Mr. President, managers, including your packet is draft annual report for 2024.
Oh,
And
okay.
then
I get it. Yeah,
I pulled out the one page that has
Right,
the draft 2025 goals.
okay.
The annual report is due to Bowser by April 30th. And so I appreciate any comments that the managers
Oh,
have.
yeah. Okay, so we're more or less done, Greg, unless the manager have anything further. Thank you very much. We need this. You know, I just want to make one personal comment on this. The manager's likely well ahead, in my opinion, on these sort of things, but when I became a manager, I always wanted these things presented to us in this particular format where we follow the bullet points and everything so that we can understand it and also help justify your unbelievable fees, you know, I'm kidding about that, but you get my point. And that's what this is about, and that's why I go about it, and it helps me digest or absorb everything that we're doing so that we have a clear understanding in the public about how we're going about this, who we're communicating with, and certainly your great work here.
As you go through the implementation portion too, which will kind of be the next portion of the plan that you guys look at. The idea is that all the actions that are laid out there are going to be related to the goal that it is, that action is in pursuit of. And it will likely be multiple goals because you guys do a lot of things that are multi-benefit. Help kind of reinforce that relationship.
Do the managers have any other items they'd like to add or questions? Mr. Bill McShane, everything's beautiful over there.
Mhm.
Vice President Ferrer. Good. Good. We've got a green light over here. Thank you, sir. Are you going to leave us now?
I am.
Wow. But my disappointment, we appreciate it. Thank you, Greg. Thank you for taking
Thank
the
you.
time out. Okay.
I will be back.
Okay. Have a beautiful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good. All right, our next item is where you're going to lead us into. Mr.
He's just waiting for his check, so.
Oh, is that right? Oh, for goodness sake.
I'm leaving town on Friday for 2 weeks, so I was wanting to try to get.
All right, we'll get this squared away.
I am alone in there and sitting by myself. but- Yeah, but it's not wrong.
Sitting on their toes.
All the issues you could raise.
I think what's going on here. While I'm doing this, John, could you lead us into our annual report? And I must say, it's very nice. And one quick comment, I see a downward trend in water levels in most of our water bodies. So good, bad, it doesn't bode with, how do I say it? Doesn't jive with potential flooding, so that's a good sign.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's
So
how I would
with that,
probably summarize it too.
please lead us into this, sir.
Sure. So every year the Watershed District is required to do an annual report and to submit it to the DNR and to Bowser. And the format hasn't changed in probably 55 years. It's pretty much still the same format. Although last year Bowser reached out after receiving it and said it was a example Watershed District annual report, and they really appreciated the effort that went into it and its contents. So even though it's not super fancy, it covers the basis, I think, of what's required to be in an annual report. So if the managers have any questions or comments, I can take them. And as I said, I pulled out the draft 2025 goals and initiatives. That's included, I think it's on page 37 or so in the report. But I pulled it out just so I won't forget to ask you for specific comments on those 2025.
Anything the manager would like to address?
Yeah, one comment about the report and not necessarily the changes this year, but perhaps in subsequent reports. On the precipitation chart, I think second to the last page. I would find it helpful to know what the average is from previous years. So that I've got something to compare it to.
Yes, sir.
So,
Treasurer Gilman, are you thinking maybe a table of what's the annual
Yep.
precepts?
You don't want to hang out, do you?
I appreciate it. Thanks for the work.
I'm thinking maybe it's,
Yeah.
you know, kind of in addition to the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. Can I have the stub also?
Yeah, hold on.
Sir?
Like, come back.
The bottom stub off of it? I think you get the top one. I just for my,
Oh, for your records.
yeah, my record. You still have that.
That works.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Have fun now.
I will.
All right.
I was thinking maybe just one additional bar.
Okay.
That would tell us about what the past 10-year average was or something along that line. Put a little,
Yeah.
information into it about, you know, what has happened in the past.
Treasurer Gilman, are you thinking just the previous year, or are you thinking because the light yellow is the 30-year normal on here.
Oh, okay. That's my fault. When I read through it, I just thought, okay, you know, I read the first part, oh, the airport, and that may be my error.
So are you
I think,
have suggestions for changes, or are you okay with this?
yeah, I think in, who is it, Emily Latilla? Famous words of Emily, never mind.
Endangered species one, you remember? Sir, Don had something.
Yeah, I don't know that anything, I think that the common thing of a similar precipitation graphs is, and this is only some year, but you can see there's a considerable difference between the 91 to 2020 average, right? So, and so is 24 just a different year, or like if every year was like that, then it looks like springs are a little drier and summers are a little wetter, right? So, but I don't know the best way to say that.
Yeah, I guess, Mr. Vice President's maybe some interpretation of the chart rather than just the chart, because when you look at the chart and the solid thinner gray line is what the 30-year normal is. And so if you compare all of the other color lines that are 2024 precept, you can see that, well, it was drier in 2024 than the last 30 years up until end of April, basically. And then it was about the same cumulatively. And then it was wetter after that, but.
Yeah, I don't know if like an average for 20, like the last few years might. I don't know, I look at it and I wonder, if it was 2024 anomalous? I mean, is this?
It may very well be, but that's subject to interpretation. He's just putting this out.
Yeah, right.
And we're gonna see what happens, but regardless of what that's demonstrating, because, you know, I know you know this well above me, that we're seeing an upward trend in precipitation and weather changes, but we're not flooding.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's the part that concerns me. You know.
I heard something recently from a good source that the general trend for the Midwest is drier. So that's a good thing for flooding. If you're a farmer, maybe not so good a thing, you know. Or if you're trying to conserve groundwater, so White Bear Lake doesn't drop really low, it's not a good thing either. So I don't know, I'm just trying to get my brain wrapped around that and how to maybe capture some aspect of that at the curve.
Yeah, we're not addressing, this isn't addressing
Yeah,
water usage either.
And I always find it maybe a little bit misleading when on the weather, whatever, they say the average. or we're above average, but that's a 30-year moving average. It's not average since records started being kept.
Mhm.
So like, yeah, you can argue all day and all night if the weather system globally is on a non-stationary state, which the best science says that it is. What the hell does an average mean? So anyways.
You know, I'm still stuck in the Eocene, you know. And, I'm noticing a whole lot of fluctuations.
We can definitely work on the precipitation section for next year.
That's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. And Don for following up. Mr. Bill, how are we doing?
Well, I did notice that neither John nor I are pictured on the cover.
Lucky you.
That's a good thing or bad thing.
Dog in there though. That's the catch.
I don't think the rapper, but he did, you know about that one, Susanna. Yeah, yeah, whatever.
Did he fiddle on the floor?
He did, that snake, yeah, I cut him loose and he went, hey, Dad, I'm gonna anoint the hallway, and I go, thank you. Yeah. I cleaned it. There were no cameras on it, thank goodness. Those are nice pics though, I like them, it shows us all doing our thing, so to speak. It's a nice report, John. But I don't, I actually.
Josh led it and was the major author of it, I guess.
Okay.
Passed along your comments.
He's all over it. Please tell him. We love Josh. He does a nice job. One thing, the district, permit, that we, reviews for the permits that we, acquired. There's also a trend, and it should be no surprise that, Lake Elmo constitutes the largest chunk, as far as I know, of our Watershed district, that they had the most permits. Kind of, the way he expressed it is fine. So I don't know, I'd like to see a graph about that, but that's good enough. Yeah, you know, something to say, okay, well, he's because I'm always under the impression that Don's neighborhood is getting all the action, but that's not true. And us West Lakeland people, you know, nobody knows we exist, whatever.
As a percentage of the area of the district, and, area of the permits, I think Woodbury probably wins the award. Or
For the size, right? For West Lakeland, Watershed probably would be more single home builds going on. I mean, that's what I see when I go to do inspections. It's maybe some small developments like Twin Pines, but mostly we're seeing individual home builds that are large home builds. So we see more, I think I've seen a lot of that in West Lakeland.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, and Woodbury, the large commercial stuff. And, yeah, and like I'm all over everything.
Oh, Woodbury, that's right. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So with that said, are there any requirements of us for this, John?
no requirements, just, if you don't have any comments, we'll finalize it and submit it to the state as required.
Yes, sir.
Just, want to give you one more chance. If you have any comments on the 2025 draft goals and initiatives, please let me know, because they're all included. I think it's page 31 of the.
What kind of a deadline do we have? The reason I'm asking is because there's a chance that myself, probably unlikely, or any of the other managers find something that they can email you and point something out. They got change.
Mr. President, it's due on April 30th, so if that's a weekday.
We've got a few days to kick around.
Yes, yeah.
If that helps.
April 30th is a Wednesday, so, yeah.
Okay. That works. But it's very nice. Please tell Josh seriously that it's very nice. It's not, I don't know if I've seen the thicker ones in the past. What I mean is information that's maybe redundant or not as pertinent.
We've tried to include hyperlinks to other reports that are posted on the website rather
Okay.
than duplicate them within this document.
Nice. Okay. All right, thank you, sir. That concludes that unless anybody has anything to add or say. So we're going to move on to attorney. This is a good one.
Yeah, well, there was a question.
Alpha.
Yeah, there was a question that I think originated from a presentation at the Minnesota Watersheds Conference regarding open meeting laws and notice requirements. I think it's pretty well understood that if there's a quorum of managers conducting business, it needs to be publicly noticed, whether it's a regular meeting or a special meeting. But the question was raised, what if there's less than a quorum, and are there circumstances in which that would have to be noticed? And the answer is yes. So I don't know that this affects Valley Branch a ton, but if there was a standing committee that met and that committee was comprised of less than a quorum, and a quorum of that committee were meeting,
Yeah.
that would have to be noticed. So you
Okay.
could kind of pare it down, right? And then just so what I really tried to do, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, unless you have questions for me, was to give some examples. When would it need to be noticed? When does it not need to be noticed?
Practical examples of.
You know, and some of it's just common sense. It's the ability to conduct business, also and the public's right to know and be part of a transparent government, versus the ability just to talk to your fellow managers and express an opinion, right? So it's using some judgment as well. So if you have questions on a specific scenario, ask me. Otherwise, hopefully this gives you some guidance.
Yeah, the way I look at it, and I'm actually a bit paranoid about that. Sitting with a quorum of managers at a silly example. The county fair, having foot-long hot dogs in the beer garden or something. And we're just having a conversation. Could that be potential trouble, so to speak, or?
If you're making decisions and trying to circumvent having an open discussion,
Got it. Okay.
that would be an issue. But just having a social gathering, that's not an issue. But the Minnesota Watershed Conference should be noted because it's a scenario in which the managers are receiving information that will then affect future meetings.
Okay, so that's more critical in that
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah, so I have the little specific case law where that applies, but what's interesting is that, it stems from Minnesota statute, but there was the definition of meeting has not been defined by the legislature. So the Minnesota Supreme Court defined it, and that's what you get a lot of in the middle. It's a breakdown of how they defined it.
What about our tour of the district when we're all together and we're down
That's
Good,
talking?
that's a good question.
That should be noticed.
And that is, right?
Yep, and if people want to attend, that's a little trickier because it's not a specific location, right? But I think if people wanted to tag along and drive and follow the managers and participate in the tour, they could do that. But I don't think if there's a social gathering that's not a discussion of watershed business occurring afterwards, I don't think the public needs to be invited to that. Does that make sense?
Dinner. Excellent. Please.
John, wasn't the discussion in St. Cloud about ad hoc committees? Yeah, it follows exactly what Suzanne is saying. It's a standing committee, even though it's less than a quorum. So you have to notice that, but if it's an ad hoc committee, that's where it gets a little, and I think last we talked about it, it's so easy to notice it, we'll just notice those anyway, because we don't have a lot of them. So if like you and Ed meet with John and Savannah to talk about this easement thing on that type of parcels, would you notice that?
I don't see any harm in noticing it,
Yeah.
right? If someone
would you-
wants,
My question is, are you required by open meeting law to notice it?
well, and that's discretionary. There's not a black and white answer. So to err on the side of caution, I would say yes. But is someone gonna, jump up and down and wave their arms in the air and, is there gonna be a finding that Valley Branch violated the open meeting law if it didn't? I don't think it's a clear yes or no. So might as well err on the side of caution, and if someone wants to show up at our office and discuss easement policy, then more the merrier. What I do want to say is, if it is a standing committee and it is noticed, it's not a workshop. That doesn't automatically give the public a right to participate and have comments, but they are able to be present and hear the discussion and opinions of the board managers. Does that make sense? I mean, realistically, I don't think you'd say, sit there and be quiet, but you could.
So, yeah, another quick one. So regarding the workshops, that's not something that they're pretty.
No, those are public. Those are open to the public.
I don't recall ever seeing.
Oh, the Sunnybrook workshop, when you had a workshop on what to do with Sunnybrook, I think this was a packed house.
Okay, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Lot of action.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're pretty clear.
Yeah, any other questions? All right, as things come up, feel free to ask.
As things come up, we can contact you or whatever. I was thinking more like subcommittee things and what the point you made about the watershed, district, attending those functions certainly requires that transparency or noticing,
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, we're having a social, conversation. We're talking about Mr. Bill's, uniform that he had to wear at Hill Murray. That's not an issue.
Not an issue.
I got everybody's attention, that's why.
I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
Just to maybe clarify for me, because when we do these notices, it's just on the bulletin board here.
Yep.
But we're required also to do public notice, like in a newspaper and stuff. What is the difference there? See, I originally thought that when we had notice a meeting, it had to get published somewhere.
Yeah, and it was gonna be a whole bunch of newspaper
Yeah.
payments. No, there are only certain items that need to be published in the newspaper, and those are specifically called out in the statute. So like the budget, or if there's a plan change or there's rule change, right? The statutes say this needs to be published, and it tells you how often it needs to be published, or it just says published pursuant to the statute, which is basically 2 times.
The notice with the capital N and a notice with the lowercase n.
Yeah.
Will it state that the district website is sufficient for noticing?
It's not,
It's not.
no, the statutes haven't changed that. It says the bulletin board. Now, I think it's good practice to put it on the website, because the majority of people are doing it. But it's kind of like publishing in a newspaper. I mean, there's some people who look for public notices, but I think most people peruse them to see if there's something interesting, not because they're very desirous of knowing exactly, did Valley Branch notice this properly?
But keeping on the up and up is.
That's important. That's
Behooves us, right?
what I'm here to guide you to do.
Yep, thank you. Yep. Keep this on the straight and narrow.
Probably more people wrap fish with that newspaper than read.
Fairly
I just pictured that too. Holy moly.
Mind the puppy kennels, right?
Yeah, she told me her dog or somebody's
Where they
dog
get the
rolled
material
and
now.
get fish. Well, one of my dogs, before the meeting, one of my dogs rolled deer, something. That was fun. Yeah. Okay. Counselor, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next item is Mr. Inspector. Yeah.
Yes, President Marchand managers, there was a report in the packet. I had returned to a number of those sites, since this report went out. I was out, quite a few sites again, a couple different updates. Silver Lake Outlet, was up, but I spoke with Rick beforehand. I think when I did the report, I've been out there, was about 2 inches over. Now it's around 5 inches or more over the weir, but everything's looking good there. I do want to make a comment on the Valley Creek restoration project done on the Nicholson property. Josh Phillips had given me a heads up. They were gonna do the prairie burn down there as part of our project. And so I did go down there and walk through and watch their, the contractor's doing a great job, but the property owner was really pleased with the contract of the work that was done, and he liked it so much. He was commenting like, I'm gonna hire these guys to do the rest of my property. I'm gonna go in and do a big buckthorn removal project. And he started kind of looking into, because he has a lot of property there along the creek, and he has one woods in particular that's just buckthorn and deadfall like we all have. But he was thinking, oh, I need to get a contractor in there and take that out of there. So it kind of had this nice side effect education, I think, with the property owner, and he really loved it. So just wanted to make that comment. That was, I think, a positive from that project.
Nice touch.
Couple things, I think I noticed in the previous report, there was a house on a gateway next to the wetland that didn't have its silt fence. Or didn't have enough silt fence up. I met with them this week. They've taken care of it. We had a complaint through the county at Park Asphalt at 75th and Jamaica about it's an asphalt company is washing off their equipment. And of course, this property is surrounded by ponds. I mean, right next to it. It's like a little peninsula. Of course, that's not something we have jurisdiction over. I did do a drive-by. I did refer it to the Washington Conservation District. I'm sorry, the Wetland Conservation Act. And so I referred it to Jay Riggs and to Karen Wold, and also referred it to the MPCA. I didn't do that direct, but with the county, and those are the proper channels for that. And John had looked into it, and apparently there had been some previous investigations at that site. So this might not be a new incident, but I drove by just to kind of scope it out. I didn't go do an inspection, but you could see, the end of the fence is right here and the wetland is right here. And so the water just runs right into the wetland. It's pretty obvious. So hopefully, some folks will be on top of that because it's not good. I did have a meeting with the city of Woodbury and the owner of the Park Place garage condominiums up in the Black Diamond site in Woodbury, the very highest site where the old gravel pit was. And it's kind of stair-stepped with different developments in there. The Karen Street apartments are there. But at the very top, there's these garage condominiums that have gone in. And so there's just been a number of things to go over. And so the city put together a walkthrough, invited me, and we were able to work with it because we have a lot of issues with kind of the perimeter and erosion towards the big infiltration basins. And so just working through with the developer, and he was really cooperative. So that was a good meeting this week. Also, Karen, well, on the report, I think you see that I met Karen and Gold, and I met at the one project of Vicente Thompson residents. I think we've got that all resolved. We had another meeting this week with it's either Kime or Chime residents in West Lakeland. It's another lot that's kind of shoehorned in next to a wetland. And so there's the driveway went in a little too close to the wetlands, so we met to talk about what could be pulled back, what could be done. And then also to just address the erosion control around that area, so. So the project manager, the excavator were very cooperative, and I think we'll have things resolved there. But we've had, we're, some of the lots we're running into in the area, we've got wetland, potholes here and there. And just, it's really important to get wetland delineations done, that the old property owner does that, or somebody does that, so we're not trying to deal with it post, in the middle of construction, it's already disturbed, right? And so how do we resolve that? So I think that's, and just even working with West Lakeland Building Inspector on, he releases a permit, are they good to go? Well, not if we don't have all of our stuff together and people reading permits, right? And understanding that there's a call to Karen to do that. There's a call to me, so that we have a heads up, so we can try to eliminate those problems. So that's kind of just an ongoing challenge, is getting people just to read their permits sometimes. So,
Yeah,
yeah. Education, right?
yeah,
So,
but also visiting some of these sites as a routine, doesn't hurt.
right, well, especially where that there's potential problems or there's wetlands. Those are the ones we really have to watch, right? Because over winter, even though there was protection in last fall, winter knocks down a lot of stuff. So you can show up in the spring and look great in December, and then you show up in April and it's all laying down. So, and then there's been rain. So yeah, it's important, especially in those critical areas, to be on top of them, so. My update. Any questions?
That was a very nice, gentle report. Good information.
Okay, very
Thank you,
good.
sir. Thank you, Mr. Inspector. Jeff, one more thing, as we said already,
Yeah,
feel free to check up on them, like that one site that you had a look at, yeah. Make people aware.
yeah, they're definitely on my list, especially you have to make sure these things get resolved before certificate of occupancy gets
Yeah.
released by the building inspector, because that's kind of some other leverage we have. If they haven't resolved something to our satisfaction, to use the building inspector to leverage that, because he really has a lot of authority. Basically you can't move in, you can't,
Yeah,
so I mean, you don't want to use that too much, but if you have to use it, if it's a club, you can try to use it. If it's just a problem site, so
you use one of our tools.
it's one of our tools. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you again, John. All right, let's see. Move on to our next. Managers, I attended the, can I talk about that? The Zoom meeting very briefly on the beavers. So I was, I don't want to knock these people. There's, I didn't think they were going to talk about Castorium, or anything like that. Some beaver products that we still use and blah, blah, blah. But they explained things that I was more or less aware of, and I felt comfortable that at this point, unfortunately, the beaver trapping that we do ends in the death of these animals, and I realize how beneficial they are. You were at that meeting.
I was.
And I realize that they are an integral part of wetlands and our what's the word? To increase the biodiversity that we have. One of the few animals that actually does this. And they didn't talk about this, but I also found out that they have caused human death. They're capable of killing people. It's a very rare instance. And the biggest one I think that was ever caught, I don't know if it was the state of Minnesota, but 110 pounds. So they didn't talk about any of this stuff. You know, they just talked about what they can do and how beneficial they are. And then for us, I go, wait a minute, but with all the stuff we got going on, how do we deal with them? And so I didn't get any answers there. And again, I'm not putting them down. Yes, sir.
Was this at the water consortium meeting
Yeah.
last week?
Yeah, I attended via Zoom and I didn't say a word, but
I was gonna bring it up because I wasn't able to make it and I was curious about it, so.
yeah,
The part that I found interesting, you know, when you look at, is, you know, where I live down by Valley Creek and I see
Yeah.
spring runoff and I see kind of this flash happens. And so they had some diagrams there where, you know, without the beaver, you know, how we get the flash and then
Yeah.
the beaver, it kind of spreads it out.
Spider,
You know, it
right.
spiders it out. And so that flash gets, and then it gets spread out. So the velocity slows down, the debris gets caught up. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. I think in certain areas, I mean, it's probably really beneficial.
They
The
are.
beavers are really beneficial in that also in those wetland areas in a drought that helps maintain
Oh,
the
yeah,
vegetation.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's not just all, you know, ready for fire, that you can maintain some of that drought area green because of the spreading out of kind of that wetland. So I thought that-
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
They reduce drought. Yeah, there
Yeah.
are so many things, and also the fact that they're quite capable of taking down massive trees. And yet they don't, and they like some of the smaller stuff, the birch and everything, but it's a win-win. Unfortunately, because of what we have, they cause flooding and things that we can't have. So they have to be, I don't know if the word extirpation is proper, but we can't really have them around here, especially in areas where we have a lot of traffic and roads, you know.
I think roads or probably houses that could be
Certainly
affected,
houses,
but other than that,
But
I'm kind of like, huh, well, maybe they're okay.
they really are. You let them go wild, you know. You bring more ducks, whatever.
They do.
Sarcasm. Just me. So anyway, it was very nice.
Ed, I gotta ask you, did they
Yes.
talk about the parachuting of beavers into areas? I think it was in Nebraska.
Yes, I know about that. I did read about that. Nebraska they didn't talk about any of that fancy stuff. So the DNR in Nebraska actually, to put them into areas, you know, kind of like what we did with the, certain Canada geese here in Minnesota to spread them to different areas. They put beavers in boxes and parachuted them in to certain areas in Nebraska. And when the box hits the ground, of course, it pops open and the animal comes out and establishes a colony, you know, mom and dad and kids and all that.
What kind of training does it beaver go through?
No, and only, what they say, only two beavers.
Is it a tuck and roll?
Only two
Or is
beavers.
it a belly flop?
Yeah, and one of them did do one hell of a belly flop. He got out of his cage and fell to his death, you know.
That doesn't,
They had
And there's the ones that come out of the box like a brown bear comes out of the cage.
Oh, whoa.
like
Those
tossing,
are the killing ones.
Yeah, whoa.
it's like tossing turkeys out of a helicopter. Is that, yeah.
So W care for
Yeah,
you.
that's cool, and they did have success with that. Yeah, so anyway, there's a great deal of information. Last one I'll mention, you know, I don't mean to keep everything, but, so I think it was, 12,000 years ago. So we had one that was almost the size of a Volkswagen. There are, skeletons of these animals. I think they weighed in excess of 300 pounds. And they didn't have the flat tail like the ones we have now. Anyway. Yeah, and, imagine that. Whole lot of beaver. Okay.
You're doing, you're right.
Anything else from any of the managers?
Yep.
Besides this wonderful discussion.
Oh,
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. President, I forgot to ask if you'd add it to the agenda and,
Oh, we can say.
either Attorney Forsythe or I asked, but there is a contract in front of you between Washington Conservation District and Valley Ranch Watershed District to do the monitoring that the managers approved at the last meeting.
You did approve this.
And so As I ask for a signature for that.
Okay, everybody could, the managers could look over that if they like, right now. Since you said we approved this, then I'm all for signing it unless anybody has any objections or comments. So what is required of us? Mr. Brock and myself need to sign.
Yes, and then attorney process, signs on their approval as well.
So Counselor, are you gonna walk around and get us? Not required, project which we. We're cool, yeah. So we can do that forthwith, right? Okay. And, let's see. There's a couple of other things.
Yes, that's discussed.
I know that, you know, we're gonna follow up, yes, ma'am. The. Oh, okay, right here, you know. You guys, I'm gonna tease you about the dog thing. I got another good one. You wait, as soon as this meeting's over. Okay. So, can everybody attend, all the managers attend the April 24th and May 8th meeting? We'll have quorum, thank you.
I will be out of town.
Oh, no, where
But-
are you going, Rick?
I'll be in Florida.
Okay,
But I may be able to attend the meeting. I'm not, I'm not quite settled yet, but I may be able to remotely call.
Zoom, okay, that's good,
Yeah.
that's a pretty pedestrian, vacation spot, right? Compared to where you guys usually go.
Well,
Holy
it's
cow.
it's a graduation
Oh,
for
okay.
one of the grandkids, our grandkids.
By all means, in your hotel room or wherever, however that works out.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna hear another Africa, Zebra Night, something or other. from
No.
you guys.
it
Yes,
hasn't worked
sir.
out recently.
Next Tuesday is the quarterly Metro Watershed meeting. I will attend that.
Very good.
So that's a physical meeting at Capital Region.
Okay. Is that on us or Watershed District? Ms. Boyd, is that us or?
No, this is Metro Watershed District. So,
Okay.
yeah, subset of
Okay,
separate.
that's fine. Very good. Not hearing anything else. Manager Treasurer Yeldman and I are gonna meet with County Commissioner Miller. And we'll figure out the location. And
Yeah.
have a nice
You're gonna
discussion.
be. right?
John, you're going to attend, right, please?
If you'd like me to.
Please. Don't give me separation anxiety. I don't know what that person's like. Okay. With that said, one final item. Motion to adjourn.
Second,
So moved and seconded.
aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay.